I remember I used to always love the background music of PBS. In other words, it's not there's evil at all locations, but it is from off them. Like for example, where we have black people's white eyes replaced with where our founders communicated for us to understand how a breaching method assigned other than what nature communicates with that to be communicated for nature and as criminal insidiousness nature, pretending that if it wasn't natural, it wouldn't be, making criminal insidiousness nature more natural. Per nature itself, I am not a lawyer. Natural law is real, black pupils. See, where the nature debate contains quality aspects of nature, where things that appear to be debatable, they're not debatable. And where things appear not to be debatable, they are. Black pupils, anyone who tries to debate legitimately, properly, that even the suburbs were tactically denatured before America's founders were born. Specific and to be a theater, specifically not even realizing that and how a breaching method was made had everyone roles. All, with northern colonies, southern colonies, the countries they were respectively the possession slash hyper possessions of, while themselves they were the possession slash hyper possession had countries A through Z, names A through Z, measured and maintained, having been entertained by systems and as systems tactical ulterior from the one that is not our species body, it is not the other species body, but it is anyway. So we could discern it, distinct from all things, but while not, but anyway. So we could distinct even if a truth, something that's true always, if it is being used to keep sequence shifts or relativity left out. Like, how about the relativity of how, for example, the Sandy Hook campuses in a prison in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, they're in the processes of confessing to me. Judge Napolitano has a video about intelligence confessions or why they leak. I'm not mentioning that. I'm just saying Judge Napolitano, watch his live stream section of his YouTube channel. But in other words, there's some ways way better this tells. In other words, Metler and a Paul Zano. I only know him trying to stand around me and make it look like we had communications with each other. Fake ties, fake natures are ties to me. And then after my neighbor graduated, who was in our grade together, and they had us stay back because they had live progressions. These are people involved with nature's as roles with security, intelligence families. I don't know the Zanos. And they live on a corner of a street. They're involved with a whole bunch of people tied to corners of streets, criminally foreign influenced, also with the news and more child abusers, leaders of kids. Rick Sam Faglione also recorded, confessed, demonstrated that him and Jonathan Maiano. He didn't say the other guy's name, but there's also others with like a David Santangelo, I think is his name. These are people with intelligence all along the Berlin Turnpike, all along Route 3, involved on all the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices. There's also a Steven Stocco and a Maria Pizzino. They might be married, I don't know. With involved all kinds of different planting, identity theft, fraud, slave, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and fake exceptions. Uses of those exceptions, criminally foreign influence too. Tactically delusions raw. With the Weathersfield Police and the other police forms in the state judicial branch offices, roles putting fake phone transcripts, changing and faking digital evidences, with more child abusers, leaders of kids. A principal upskirt nature reported convicted of doing that in the shopping centers of little upskirt of girls with digital things like that. He also was then, and then before that I caught him with worse before that roles with some murders and untimely deaths, intercities connected. Also for that because people play stupid with subjects. People pretend they have a free press because they want to make subject treatments, and they don't realize that they've been planting predicate acts with facts, wire crime acts, methods, mail crimes, real sick collusions with the intelligence at their locations or next to their locations. Fake news is an understatement because there are a whole bunch of countries here shared on and off campuses together. They showed me time collusions with it. They'll tell you, Afghan leaders and kids of Afghans through decades, they'll tell you, a whole bunch of people involved with the people on the wire crimes on my street. Also, half not even their fault. With the Wethersfield police, with the name Collusion and this Phil Collusion. He's involved. I saw him on a bike on my street. What's he doing on my street? And he's never been here before on my street. And on a bike, too, on foot. I might have seen him in a car before or a truck. I don't know if it was him. But he was on a bike. And it was the timing of it. He still has roles with people with some poisons and drugs and federal evidences crimes with the Bob Chase and falsified police reports with a Bob Chase and this Phil Collusion. And they brought up the name Christine. And there's a Paul Zano who has a house at a corner on Maple Street, Route 3, that goes by the state judicial branch office in Connecticut. But it's not the house on the corner. There's a street that goes back, so it is the house on the corner. No, there's an exception there, and then his house is behind there, because these are people also involved with the Brian Silver and a whole bunch of people with the Britain Superior Court that know my name. I don't know their name, tied to these houses and names, involved with the one with the wire crimes, falsified police reports, stacking, police forms switching names, multiple towns and police forms and types are involved with this. The ones two with the name Ray Collusion. He also took a shot at me with a pellet gun. Right before Donald Trump, the president / chief, was shot at. And these are also people like with the name Kerr involved with Officer Jerry Miller, further involved with planting evidences with social media on all sides of my houses. On all sides of my house. Also with the Mark Violet, who also confessed and demonstrated. There's a Joshua Schumacher and his mother is involved, and locations and people next to where the Wethersfield police station is now, since before it was there. Involved with the Joshua Schumacher with identity theft, fraud, planting fake exceptions, fake ties to me consciously, per his roles, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Also with some black KKK Latino themed Italian themed predicate acts, fake falsified police reports. The men just put me in a fake words with him at the Wethersfield police station with one of the Saudis, also with DeMorals, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with people named Scalora, and they named other names at the World Trade Center and at the years ahead of time, but then shortly right before it. Claudia Scalora was involved with the World Trade Center attack. People involved, not just all sides, including America's name and Saudi's name used remotely. A through Z haven't been used remotely. At least thank God for that. All we have to do too is blame this hyper foreign and focus on the predicate acts. Don't change and fake people's words when they speak about predicate acts, like how having black pupils, whites of eyes, and other communicated, and nature communicates with that for nature and pretending it's debatable. Inherent to, active to, and progressive to. The experts, the names of the people, the sciences. They have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects of nature. They've been attaching people to fake syntax, fake conversations with themselves, right through the mail. The same ones involved with various natures of courts, family members, including prosecutors, personally and professionally, involved stacking faked evidences and databases, screening all these different overt criminal enterprises and roles with other countries at the same exact time with the KKK, black thing, another thing with intelligence, not the way they believe. Even their acting professors involve a whole bunch of people on Church Street in Old Westfield. I don't know at all. They're seeking me out to plant evidences. And they'll tell you this. but you have to ask them right. In other words, and where there's a John DeMore with Old Weathersfield, increasingly involved with people with confessions tied to the World Trade Center and his roles with maybe even if any kids were missing from the area. He had roles with that. I barely know him. It's involved too through vertical and horizontal confessions. I know about this. Each campus I went to had recorded from off that campus influences to collusion slash S that also involve uses of names next to the campuses, but they don't even know the extent of it themselves, including all the ones that are involved with it. And this is also relative to how it's that way manifest note too with the black pupils' whites of eyes. And then on top of that too, not only is what nature communicates left out, our founders communicated declassified about what they said and didn't say about the breaching method, but we have that left out. We have self-value roles with use slash S of their words and with convictions made by them, leaving self-value and and having been used while they're being used remotely, self-valued, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects and natures of collusions too, with the uses of our founders' words, self-value, leaving out what they communicated about, leaving out that how there's a breaching method that was measuring everyone said, including group-wise, and had everyone against everyone's self and pretending others, speaking for humanity anyway. Many pray, boxing. In other words, forgiveness is to look at those points where that are simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous, where everyone's guilty together and or relative to, or they're sensing that person, even if they're a majority of people, even if they're everyone. Everyone doesn't agree to call it racism because it was black, white, and other countries that put this together. There are proofs that they took down mountains in Africa and in North America. I mean, it's the Mexico and America. There was a mountain that was a totally different nature. There are proofs they had been sustained way longer. The same thing had been sustained and captivated England, not remembering English history, needing to defend themselves by valuing groups of humanity the way the breaching method employed them to be. Everyone not realizing that the breaching method is using as a reference how we are all self-valued roles are sensed if we don't value being and having been systems tactical terror from what nature communicates to and as the value of A through Z. But seeing how we are systems tactical terror of it. So you use short words with it, right? You can't. You have and then you can't protract. Then everyone changes and fakes what people say when they know predicate acts. I'm not even a lawyer, clearer than day, black pupils. The breaching method is one of the things that is true always. Another thing it is true always as is a predicate acts with facts method. And who denies that? I don't care if it's Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. In other words, they have criminal enterprises grouped wrong as collusion slash S. They have terrorists the same way. And these collusions, don't forget, they have other communicated for our founders and they communicated to have communicated for themselves. Boxings, but makes us shush to hear. I teach us things, but Lord, until you do. Oh, no, for real. So the breaching method showed that the identities of law, they're a certain type of victim that we have to show had collusions with the kids and adults of New York City in the prisons. And like in Sandy Hook prison, has rules with biological crime methods, like and a torture method that has been since some ancient times. Where there's, in other words, with time, and there's elderly homes and veteran homes too. See how those veteran homes look just like those. You think of all the engineering and means that don't even cost anything they could have done for veterans and to build something. But they mimicked that people stacking in New York City. That little kids clearer than day, relative simultaneously correlated to the slash hyper correlated to the design of the suburbs before America's founders were born. Slavery was already entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies. And if you pay attention to the laws that were simultaneous, it was torture, extortion, slavery of everyone. We have those subjects like slavery parted from that. They leave it out, pretend things are debatable that are not. Get hot, vaccines, but keep it when we get hot on what is true always. There is a difference. In other words, we can force. Who's going to deny that it's about a predicate acts with facts method too? Slavery, for example. That's one of the things that is true always. In other words, that's one of who denies it. They're going to have inherent to, active to, progressive to their nature of logic for the identity of nature itself. Ye pupils, peer. See whites of eyes, ye A through Z. We are in a semi-ancient trap here, Anthony. All we have to do is admit it and blame that syntactically. Not even lawyer, we can call it a hyper anti. We can make the ACE Act. We also need simultaneously, because this is about per method, because it's hyper invisible, but still discernible has to lead. We also need simultaneously the Who Disbelieves Act. So, also, these are people involved with wire crime, mail crime, falsified police reports, identity theft, frauds. They also pretended through the mails, the police forms, and a whole bunch of people from Whiting Forensics involved with a Joshua Julian, also involved with all sides of my house with predicate acts and with the names of the police. Then they're pretending people, it's because they're neighbors and things like that. These have judges and prosecutors and their family members in collusions with them, needing to pretend those things at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Timed use /S of collusion /S with all those different names of the different countries and the subjects with Judge Napolitano in the news. There's differences, racketeering. We're going to appreciate the hyper evidential. They should apologize with former the FBI. And there's a Judge Napolitano. There's a Joshua Stryker who's involved. I never had a word of conversation with him. He's involved with sequence shifts and a whole bunch of little kids when I was a kid. And then as an adult, he's involved with abuses of them and people at Trinity College who the girl will tell you. In other words, a whole bunch of people tied to Mike Pandolf has roles with all sides of criminal civil cases and depositions with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with a whole bunch of different countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the people countering them, and the people with the prisons, like the ones with the name O'Brien, and Cololo. There's a Phil Cololo with a Bob Chase, with a Whiting Forensics and others in Manhattan and Middletown through time. Involved also with a Subby Bajario. A Subby Bajario is also with a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed is involved with them with predicate acts on all sides of Central Connecticut State University and on it since before I went there, intercities and interstates and internationally, but also hyper internationally. These are also people with UConn involved with this here, intercities, not for the ways known. This showed a whole bunch of victims / hyper victims. They could take part of industries. It built them as styles and logic and natures of reason and of collusion. Then it showed them use them remotely. Did this, perfected it, and then modern countries were born. While it was still entrenched and using this in ways that no one fathomed, juxtaposed with every instance, positive, negative, neutral. The difference of it. This is a difference. This is getting over on how nature uses difference, the ways we know. Exactly used to show us how / more. Two other identities of relationships it has to itself as an only increasing identity of volume. That too, relative with and relative to, from, as, with, and for, a special difference. relative to the identity of all space slash existence. It is here where we are quality of diffusion. And going by what is positive to itself, where it is already to an extent, all parts of space slash existence, is one identity of relativity to both positive and negative simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously. And it is here where consciousness parses as Earth and as ourselves, not as Earth, but as Earth anyway. And hyper additionally from being and how being. That identity that is not our species body. It is not the identity of the other species bodies, but it is anyway. We are distinct, we are non-distinct, and we are simultaneous, but also with this slash hyper simultaneous. Three distinct identities of volume as of itself as the identity of the hyper invisible but still discernible are bound. Excuse me. Another word. Thank you. All gathered around. Same one. It has us needing to value more than one word, to appreciate more than one word for a verb. To each of the sciences and acceptations of them and natures associated with this, positive and or negative, has been criminal insidious since nature. Because this preaching method measures and maintains the names of the people of the sciences, grouped, tactically ulterior from what it could afford to be, let alone to protract. Any individual, which no only an individual could defend the order of the finite, or finite details many ways, could afford it to be, let alone to protract. Relative to two, where how there's so many passions and emotions regarding the value of industries, or of jobs themselves, or of wealth themselves. Nature shows us it has ways that we know about value. Value has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And then further as a slash value nature, as a slash value progression. Just like identity. In the identity of all space slash existence. It completes that. But see, now we have it completed through systems tactical ulterior from its own. It's not death, leaf of Hades. There are proofs that these were scientific terms to show what nature demonstrates. Terms from pantheism about the identity of the hyper, about the one and hyper invisible but still discernible, and showing us its functional being that way. All exceptions and exception nature are extending too, with demonstration slash also the same thing, but also about how it teaches us about how it shows us how everything's about hyper additional nature. All exceptions and exception nature show us too. That and where and how it uses exceptions, exception nature the way we do. But also the way it does that we won't. It won't. We could do ways other than its own, but it will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And the breaching method knew that nature would do that. And with that, those demonstrations, it knew that nature would also be demonstrating itself. For example, a breaching method is true always. One of the other things too, true always, that slavery was about. But rather than let one voice speak that, even altogether, in other words, things like racism are forced blamed. As styles too, with the black people's whites of eyes, then using differences, black or white, to get over on anyone who's using the short words properly. Don't forget, you guys have self-value and have had self-value rules. And that's been used remotely, in other words, communicating for James Madison and for our founders behind his plan. that George Washington agreed to use and to help. You guys won't even be allowed. You guys won't even allow anybody to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, which would have brought up how he agreed to help them and use that plan. You guys have to pretend it was because you were shown that you need to pretend it's because you were checking to see if people were going to do homework or not. The breaching method show everyone to blame other things on the others ourselves, the same way it needs it done. And then it shows them they can't look back in time, but exactly the way it wanted and needs. Why you guys jump in my conversation when I know World Trade Center predicate acts? WFSB had so a whole bunch of teachers and educators associated with the Paul Zano. He's also I never had a communication with him. Him and Ray Clough used to give all the time, the whole time, to a Stephen Stocko a hard time in my math class. But these are people that are always acting like they make fake sides of issues. The intelligence community increasingly, and as ones with all these different countries, and they do the crazy shit with, excuse my language, with their own. Tactically, delusions are odd too. That's why we need to get them on paper. They forge and switch names into branch. They have collusions with pretending they perceive prejudice, racism, things like that. They're the ones who have the roles at crime scenes. With the differences, racketeering worse than war crimes. The predicate acts with facts method. I'm not even a lawyer. Clearer than day. Concentrated, clearer than day. To be able, where you could all discern it on the people of New York City. A method /S. But you have to be able to discern it. You have to be able to discern the founding locations. Houses built like a witch trial place right next to the old Weathersfield Webb House. Then they changed the name to the Webb Stevens House. Exactly like doing things like that. And the way they do it, exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. You guys have the nature of debate when you were preventing people short words about James Madison and about sanity. You guys have been the experts on psychology have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, rot readings of history, and collusion /S with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, per use of location collusions, location /S. That's why and how they could even be motivated, to be that way, even though it's recorded. Our founders, what they declassified about it, other than they said is what they communicated. And they communicated there was a breaching method sensing what everyone said. And they knew that it was hurting everyone sickly distinctly to measure and maintain if anyone was going to mention that, which is required by the science's integrity of them, individually grouped them together. But everyone knew that you can't do that. They're going to speak anyway. Then they're going to want forgiveness, but if you give them the forgiveness, they want to keep talking like the economy talk is not semi-guilty. The difference of their guilt or their overt criminal enterprise, the people next to it, those differences where there's a breaching method that perfected this. Before modern religious messengers are born, is more probable and practical to convict. Is more sane to convict too. Ugh. Thank God the religious books were religion to catch them in a trap. If we pay attention, the people defending the religion, the people countering them, and the exceptions, when they make treatments of subjects, they have inherent to, active to, and progressive to their styles and logic and natures of logic. Criminally foreign influence, fact shaping nature, quality aspects of nature. Tactically, delusions are odd too. And that wouldn't be that way had we blamed a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise method. Doesn't even have to be standing. And we give ourselves injunctive reliefs /hyper-injunctive reliefs And the hyperinjunctive believes we move with temporary movements. And the first movements are for the people who need it the most in the world. Except in other words, and with exceptions, the way nature would make us do this. Like the people who need it the most, one way, as people where there's no war and things like that, maybe, but where there's war too, that's another way. It's really, but that's where we can put this down like a module for our species body at Ukraine and Russia right now. A module. It will make easements that will know that we did that together. And we can communicate with the people that will give easements to, like Poland. And like with Iran. This is critical with the beginning of the with the beginning of the beginning of the Old Testament says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the department for it. But rather than do that, no one even knows about that. And it says only defend right here. In other words, even if someone doesn't read the Old Testament, they read the New Testament. People with all the passions about it, the Bible, they don't even know that, or they don't even knows that. It's pretty significant. Only defend right here, and the same thing with the Quran. The Quran has a part that says, the only thing that matters is if you are honest about the identity of all space/existence. Per translation, per my understanding, but per my translation of an English transliteration of the Quran. It says all that you have to do is that. The only killing that it allows is if people are going to do that, and that's demonstrably where they're having their international monitor conversations. What they call diplomacy. But that syntax and all that's associated with that is and has been used remotely, criminally, for impulse, tactically, delusions, rot, and being and having been shown how it is being and having been used remote, how to get away with it. This is a hyper sophistication reading of the laws as an identity of hyper criminal insidiousness nature that showed modern countries, as it had shown latter semi-ancient countries themselves, how to blame other things, others themselves, in response /s to what no one knew how to counter. Everyone still has a hyper unnatural imposition /s that is generating too distinctly, but hyper additionally. The same thing without the hyper, unnatural imposition /s. The breaching method is manifest at our countries, A through Z, sickly distinctly, because it has a method by that. It keeps other things. You ever know how like people, wherever you should talk about like things that are done between cities and states that are manifest, like people listening on the back of the phone when someone else calls someone. The opposite is done too, where they fake that. So if anyone speaks about it later, I've recorded this various ways. Joe DeMoro has been attaching me to fake ties, fake natures of ties to himself. And he has roles with some Mendez police, fabricating fake ties to kids with foreign countries and foreign domestic medical families, and people with the businesses and houses next to Hartford, Connecticut, Hartford Hospital through time. Involved also a whole bunch of people at New Britain's Central Connecticut State University have foreign and domestic, all these countries involved with people on Valleycrest Street in Weathersfield, Connecticut. Involved also at old Weathersfield locations like a John DeMoro. He's got a whole bunch of sexual and medical offenders, including principal leaders of kids, childhood years apart, child child leaders of kids first forest. They have roles of other natures of organized crime with these people, with the youngest kids. These are also people at the next to the kindergarten I went. Increasingly with a Kevin Harris and his mother. The kids of people associated with that school are involved with predicate acts with the Leahy family too. Putting fake transcripts, fake ties to me. I have it since I was a kid, putting fake, doing that, putting it in behind people's backs, putting fake things in databases, fake ties to people. God help the kids who spoke to those doctors. They got their kids involved with upskirt nature pictures and digital crime methods with Facebook and with the FBI with their Facebook page. Collusions with the Weathersfield Police Facebook page and Whiting Forensics with a Joshua Schumack. People at three spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike involved with the O'Brien family and the Claw family with wire mail crimes. All kinds of natures of organized crime, actually, and pretended only undercover with the people at and next to the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices of in Weathersfield, Connecticut, in the state capitol, and people from Hartford Hospital. And then the British Superior Court, they confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's people with the name Chet Casper, and he's involved also. My classmate said with a Debbie Gold and her and former mayors. They've been putting fake communications, fake ties, fake natures of ties between kids. Increasingly, their roles with a Jonathan Maiano and Joe Aiello too. All exceptions, like all true, like with the shooting of the guns. I'm not the one who brought up the guns too, and those are people tied to a former mayor, Gold, has all kinds of natures of organized crime as roles with kids and people tied to body dumping spots. Increasingly, as one's tied to a South Saviello too, that her and O'Brien family demonstrated, and with also with others from other towns. I don't know the South Saviello. He'll tell you they were influenced. He doesn't know the extent of it. Richard Dombrowski too was involved with wire crime acts and methods with people on my street, also with a game with no phone involved with that. They do the opposite of everything they do too. So Joe DeMoro hid what I recorded before they did that. If they did that, no, I'm pretty sure they did that because Heather Hansen too. I don't know if she was on the one or who was it. With people from intercities of Connecticut. These are people investing the different people associated with the databases, and then further at campuses to collusion/S, right back with location/S. The ways that breaching method never left, relative to where and how our founders' words are self-valued, have been self-valued, used, leaving out what they declassified about that, while being and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Forgiveness is to show how this is being having been used remotely and where and how it is being used remotely now. These are styles and logic and natures of logic need to value this having been, also relative to where and to how. People could get away with pretending that they can't discern how nature itself shows us this. Thank God our founders too. Nature and our founders have this pretended other, and people pretending they have free press. They're to hide it. The difference of their collusion there with predicate acts methods, and they're being influenced. Also, the difference of the intelligence there or the ones next to them. Their intelligence next to WFSB, next to Fox Connecticut News, and next to WTNH, especially if that was a Fred Grisey I saw from a distance in New Haven, Connecticut, because there are FBI and other agencies associated with the Fred Grisey, involved also with people with the name O'Brien and intercities of Connecticut, and with Sandy Hook, more predators of kids, including medical, including there's a prison there who have ruled some kid had some like maggots in his body, I believe, or something like that. And I was over there, and because they arrested me for harassment and made all this and changed what I hid, changed what's recorded digital and other with a principal upskirt nature. I recorded with other natures of predicate acts with the Weathersfield Police and with more people, with other child abusers, leaders of kids years before, and more people involved, more people involved too, with the kids of more principals, and with more principals, and with more deans and their family members. A Dean Judd and his family members have roles with a Wayne who would say, I don't know his name, he knows my name. He's involved with intelligence. He might be the one involved too at Mill Woods Park. People at Mill Woods Park have been planting evidences in federal, like fake ties, fake natures of ties to kids from other areas and roles with it with the difference of adults and kids. These are also people in the news pretending they could speak for adult relative to how they were abused as kids, because they were relative to they were lied to from people off campuses, putting predicate acts with facts rules in campuses as sequence shifts. Jonathan Mayall is one of the ones involved with one of the people from the and multiple people from the British Superior Court involved with judges and prosecutors, investigations, investigators being and have been used remotely, criminally for an influence, tactically delusions raw. Rick Cianfaglione says it's with people on Covington Street in the Britain Superior Court since before I even went to Central Connecticut State University. And I lived there after I graduated from there. And they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with the intelligence that works at Central Connecticut State University with a whole bunch of people from Weathersfield who have roles with all kinds of natures of organized crime and relative home break-ins and timed use / estimate roles that were also timed use of / of corners and of exceptions, like cul-de-sacs, like a curve on the street, but it's not a right-hand angle. In other words, or like in like the location of it, with a side entrance to the park. It has something to do. A Ray Collo, a Mike Kerr, and a Joe DeMoro. They have some girl, I don't remember her name. It has something to do. She has roles with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices and their educators who have been putting fake things in databases, including with the leaders of the kids, lying to the kids and lying to the parents, using truths for lies too, keeping in nature a debate of collusions with predicate acts. They have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and consciously confessing and demonstrating and pretending that it's only about them legitimately, trying to pretend for police integrity or trust, etc. They know it's not that because they're forging and switching names and refusing to get on paper. They're lying about what they think about what YouTubers say. For example, mass identity theft, fraud, slanderous natures, and styles are only capable of being if anyone tries to use reason and proper per nature, let alone nature and what our founders communicate. Our founders too communicated this with their communications is the subject of a breaching method that was measuring and maintaining what everyone said relative to collusions that were only allowed against everyone against themselves too. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if it was a majority of people as that body, including if it was everyone, black peoples, any grouping of humanity from this. Pay attention to how nature shows you that one of the things that true always slavery was about was a human factory nature breaching method. Pay attention to how nature shows you one of the things it was about true always. I'm not even a lawyer. It's a predicate acts with facts delivery system method, a high crime method. Now, it's a wire crime method now too. Styles of wire crime methods, styles of mail crime method roles. There are whole mail crime methods like that are involved with where and how they really stayed so stupid with going back and forth with asking questions in cases. And how we are showing it on TV is not how it plays out. They have all kinds of collusions with people that have been seating juries. There's a Dr. Zeman involved with multiple child abusers, leaders of kids first forced. And he's been involved with identity theft, frauds, and delusions. So we have experts of each of the same lawyers, all kinds of legal racketeering, a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital are involved with people with the name Colo on my street. With Weathersfield police have been forging and switching names. They confessed the name Scalora involved with it, and Robert Rodriguez. They has digital crimes with them too. It has something to do with their roles on corners of streets and exceptions, and their roles all along Route 3 with predicate acts, with the state judicial branch offices and with the state corrections offices. Also has names that have been predicate acts and predicate acts, whole methods of them recorded at and between each of the campuses. And how they influence the names next to the campuses to collusions is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, but then pretending others simultaneously. So we need a who disbelieves act because of their roles with the uses of weapons and violence too. How they got away and get away with this. In other words, let's who disbelieves. They leak this stuff and they jump into the agencies of recorded capacity demonstrate they have at least an extent of their consciousness that they're criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and needing to cover it up relative to how they have on a mass scale locations, areas, and states, people of the intelligence branch, intelligence tied to them. They jump in and say, "Oh, take your meds," or they jump in and say, in other words, like right when Judge Napolitano has as a context too. In other words, the psychiatry ones with the badges and the gavels, they have delusions that we have recorded, and they have criminally foreign influence, readings of statutes and precedents in the science's values, and American history's value, and names. You're gonna observe this, but you have to get them on paper, black pupils. Say sorry to YouTube too, FBI, and the other police forms. And please understand, YouTube, don't be influenced by them. And the courts, they've been putting fake things in databases since before computers for another breach name involved. To discern this, we have to discern the scientific value of the breaching method. But we have this left out of our founders' communications that communicated for us not to leave this out with reception, with diffusion of the words from it. And it has the value of the Constitution unabridged and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list hyper additionally. Black pupils. Yeah. Long it has been time. It is time. It is time. It is time.